Hello everyone. This is the 30th part of the story, Magical Journey in Harry Potter World. Chapter 91, Getting a Healing Magic Teacher. Healing magic is used to restore any biological beings to their optimal health, as it cures damaged or withered organisms, wounds, broken bones, low vitality, and diseases or poisoning. Though a healer may potentially heal any form of body damage, the patient must be alive, even if hanging by a thin thread, to be healed. Poppy Pomfrey picked up her cup of tea after giving a concise description of the magic she had spent most of her professional life practicing. She was crisply dressed in her Medihealer's uniform. She was clad very similarly to the uniforms worn by Victorian and Edwardian nurses. She wore the typical nurse's uniform, which consisted of a maroon dress, white pinafore apron, and a white nurse's cap. On her apron was a brooch that showed her status as a trained Medihealer. Currently, the matron was sitting in her office with Quinn. Both healer and student were enjoying a cup of afternoon tea. Of course, Quinn was the one who had approached the Hogwarts matron. He had invited her to have a conversation over a cup of tea. Poppy had realized a long time ago that when Quinn entered the hospital wing, it would be because he wanted to talk to her and not because of some injury or disease as every other student did. She knew that if she tried to ignore Quinn, the Ravenclaw would just hang in the hospital wing and keep on talking to her. It didn't matter if she was tending to another patient, brewing potions, cleaning, or preparing an inventory, as Quinn would keep up a one-sided conversation, and somehow every time, he would be successful in making her talk. Every single time, she would be roped into a conversation, and before Poppy knew it, she would have talked to Quinn for nearly an hour. After months of that, Poppy had realized that if Quinn entered the hospital wing when she wasn't terribly busy and could afford to talk as she worked, then she would have to talk to Quinn. So at times like now, when there were no patients in the hospital wing, she would have tea with Quinn. She had come to console herself that at least Quinn didn't visit her injured, things could always be worse. "We have been doing this for a while, and I have yet to see you drink tea." "Why is that?" asked Poppy after sipping her tea, looking at the beverage in front of Quinn. "I don't like tea," replied Quinn as he picked up his non-alcoholic ginger beer glass mug. "I don't like the taste, even with milk added to it." Poppy looked at Quinn with mock apprehension and commented, "And you call yourself an Englishman? How can you not like tea?" Quinn rolled his eyes at the quip before asking, "When you heal an injury such as a lesion or broken bone, is the healing process the same as the natural healing process?" In his second year at Hogwarts, Friar had introduced the Cursed Vaults to Quinn, and Quinn had spent a majority of that school year solving the first icy vault. But after he was done, Quinn realized that he had spent most of his time with the vault. The exploration had disrupted his magic learning and researching plan that Quinn had set up before knowing about the existence of the vaults, so Quinn had made a resolution that he would give ample enough time to learn magic that he had planned to learn before he knew the existence of the vaults. Last year, Quinn had started strong and started upon illusion magic while researching the second vaults. But after that, Quinn had been inflicted by the sin curse. Because of the influence of the sin curse, Quinn had not given the second vault a second glance and had spent a lot of time in the library. That had pushed Quinn to gain a lot of knowledge, which was great for Quinn as he had learned more than he had estimated at the start of the year. But this year, Quinn was working on the third vault, which resulted in the vault taking a chunk of his time. So in order to fulfill his resolution, Quinn started strong and looked for a branch of magic that wasn't directly related to the vault and that would be advantageous to learn. The branch he chose to research in earnest was healing magic, and no better place to start than his favorite faculty, Matron Poppy Pomfrey. "I presume you are talking about the traditional wound healing without magic?" inquired Poppy and got a nod from Quinn. The healing process of a wound consists in replacing destroyed or damaged tissue with newly produced tissue. When someone is injured, a regulated sequence of biochemical events is set into motion to repair the damage. This process is divided into predictable phases: blood clotting, inflammation, tissue growth, and tissue remodeling. The wound healing process is not only complex but also fragile, and it is susceptible to interruption or failure leading to the formation of non-healing chronic wounds. A serious expression crossed the matron's face as she warned. Therefore, under inexperienced hands, healing magic can do more harm than good. That is why healers have harsher N.E.W.T grade requirements than any other mainstream field. Healing magic replaces the 4 steps, and semi-replaces them to the point that you can see the regenerative process progressing with the naked eye. Poppy cut a forkful of cake and ate it before explaining how healing of wounds worked. For example, if a patient comes with a cut in their arm, I would first replace the natural blood clotting stage by magically slowing down the flow of blood, and making sure that it doesn't ooze outside the body to avoid death by blood loss. Next, magic would similarly replace the inflammation process, ensuring no infection in the wound and damage, and it clears out dead and damaged cells to make space for the new cells. The final step of that process is to trigger cell division and then accelerate the healing process till the wound is completely healed. She smiled and asked Quinn a question about the thing that she explained. What is the thing you will never see in magical healing that is always seen during natural healing? Is it the presence of scabbing? Replied Quinn in a questioning tone before explaining. Scab is formed to separate the wound from the outside environment. Because it takes time for wounds to heal, scabbing is necessary to prevent infections from outside. Poppy nodded with a smile. Correct. The presence of a scab is not needed with healing magic. So healing spells make sure that scabs aren't formed by the body. But what about wounds that are more critical than small cuts? The wounds that can't be healed in one go, do they also don't need scabbing? Asked Quinn as he thought about wounds that could potentially kill a person within a minute. No, they don't need scabbing. A wound, no matter how severe, and as long as it isn't cursed, can be healed within a day or two. Even if a person's entire body was heavily injured. Poppy stared intently at Quinn as she continued. Like someone who doused themselves into a high-grade freezing potion and caused damage to their internal organs, could be stabilized until we heal their injuries to the point that they aren't life-threatening. Quinn cleared his throat and picked up his mug of ginger beer to drink from it. The injury from entering the icy vault without blood magic had caused too much damage to Quinn. At that time, Poppy had to work hard and move quickly to stabilize Quinn's situation from deteriorating. She was lucky that Quinn's magic had taken care of the critical part, and she just needed to make sure that he didn't relapse. If Quinn's magic hadn't helped out, Poppy would have transferred Quinn to St. Mungo to be handled by healers who had experience with that level of critical injuries. Then it means that magical healing is an accelerated version of natural healing, concluded Quinn from the information given to him by Poppy. Poppy hummed in response before speaking. We in the healing community like to call it regenerative medicine. When Quinn tilted his head in confusion, Poppy explained. Regenerative medicine deals with the process of replacing, engineering or regenerating cells, tissues, or organs, to restore or establish their normal function. Normally, our bodies aren't naturally able to heal organs that are badly injured or are under the risk of failing. But with healing magic, we can make those previously impossible things possible. You know that as long as your limbs aren't cursed off by dark magic, we can even regrow them. Such is the power of magic. Quinn nodded deeply in agreement that healing magic transcended normal healing and wasn't just accelerated natural healing. Plus, that is just healing wounds. Healing magic also cures diseases of both magical and muggle kinds. The possibilities are endless. As long as it isn't too late, healing magic has the power to heal any illness, diseases, and mutations. Dragonpox, Black Death, Spatagroit, Scrofungulus, and other diseases were once incurable. But with advancement in healing magic, they now don't pose a threat to wizard kind if taken care of properly. How did you start on your training with healing magic? Asked Quinn, wondering how to get some practice. I'm sure that you didn't directly start on humans, right? That would be just inviting trouble. Poppy nodded in agreement with a smile and recalled the time she was doing her apprenticeship at St. Mungo's. There were less experienced trainee healers who messed up healing humans, even after they were trained off humans. You start with small animals like rats, mice, and fish. After you have a good handle on them, we move you on to bigger animals like pigs, goats, and cows. I personally also trained on birds and rabbits, as recommended by my mentor. After some time training on animals, the trainee, then, is moved on to humans. Of course, people who weren't training to be healers and just wanted to learn some healing spells didn't go through this gradual stage of progress. They simply learned spells and hoped they would work when coming across some minor injuries. An example that came to mind was Gilderoy Lockhart using a healing spell that mended bones, but instead, Lockhart ended up vanishing all bones in the arm. That is why trainee healers had to go through a gradual off-human process before they were allowed to operate on humans. So when they finally operated on humans, they would have confidence and experience backing them. Poppy looked at Quinn and asked, "Why do you ask?" "Wait, let me guess, are you thinking about learning healing magic?" "Actually, yes, I am thinking about learning healing magic," admitted Quinn before asking, "Will you teach me? I think having a guide will help me out." Quinn had books on healing magic, spells, charms, herbology, and potions. He had it all. And Quinn didn't necessarily need guidance. But Quinn felt that having a guide or someone who would specify a learning plan would help him immensely. Poppy was Quinn's favorite faculty member, and that's the reason why Quinn decided to ask Poppy if she would teach him. If there hadn't been any relation between the two, Quinn would have learned healing magic on his own, even if that meant it would take him more time. The Hogwarts healer studied Quinn for a while and contemplated what he had said. Healing magic was an extensive subject and required a considerable amount of skill and knowledge. Poppy knew Quinn was knowledgeable and smart from their conversations. She also knew that Quinn scored high grades from the passing talks she had with the professors. Finally, she knew Quinn's skill in potion brewing from the potions he regularly dropped off. She was just worried if it was too soon to teach Quinn healing magic, because if she was to teach him like she was taught, then it would take a lot of time, and it might affect his performance in classes. "If I were to teach you, do you promise you won't let your grades fall?" asked Poppy in seriousness. "Grades? Yeah, why would they fall?" asked Quinn in confusion. "My grades never fall. If I'm going to teach you, I want you to be serious about it, meaning that you will have to devote time to healing magic. If that affects your class performance, then we'll stop immediately," warned Poppy as she looked into Quinn's eyes. "One dip, and we stop. If you want to learn healing magic after that, wait until after Hogwarts to study." "I'm fine with that. If my grades dip, we stop," acknowledged Quinn. It was a no-brainer for him because his grades wouldn't dip even if he slept through every class all year long. "Okay, then. We'll start next week. 2 lessons every week, when you have free periods." Quinn thought about his class schedule and his other commitments before coming up with a reply: Thursday and Saturday mornings. "Then it's decided. You'll come here on Thursdays and Saturdays," said Poppy with a smile, before demanding, "You aren't to tell anyone about these lessons. I don't want other students coming to me and asking for lessons. This is just between you and me, understood?" Quinn gave a thumbs up with a beaming smile, happy to have gotten a healing mentor. The two fell into a comfortable silence before Quinn decided to change the topic of the conversation. "So, do you think we'll cure lycanthropy in the future?" asked Quinn, nonchalantly, not giving any indication that he knew something. Poppy twitched at the naming of lycanthropy. The mere mention of the illness made her remember that there was a lycanthrope in the castle right now. Remus Lupin, the new Defense Against Dark Arts professor, was an unwilling victim of the illness that had been with him through most of his life. A werewolf, also known as a lycanthrope, was a human being who, upon the complete rising of the full moon, became an uncontrollable, fearsome and deadly humanoid wolf. This condition was caused by infection with lycanthropy, also known as werewolfery. Werewolves appeared in the form of wolves, but there were distinctions between them and regular wolves. A mixture of powdered silver and dittany applied to a fresh bite would seal the wound and allow the victim to live on as a werewolf. Although tragic tales were told of knowing victims begging for death rather than becoming werewolves. "Why do you ask about lycanthropy?" asked Poppy. She wanted to probe Quinn in case he knew about Remus Lupin's condition. 2 students in Hogwarts knew about Lupin's lycanthropy condition. Harry Potter and Ivy Potter were aware of Lupin's condition before Lupin took the job, so they knew not to spread the news about Lupin being a werewolf or lycanthrope. If Quinn knew, then she would instruct him not to spread the news. Things spread fast in Hogwarts through the infamous rumor mill, and if Lupin's condition was to become known, it would incite panic in the student body. "Oh, I happen to know someone connected to lycanthropy and werewolves," smiled Quinn as he looked at Poppy. "And they are in the school at this moment." The matron's heart skipped a beat when she heard Quinn's words. "Oh, no. He knows," thought Poppy worriedly. There was only one person who was connected to lycanthropy, and that was Remus Lupin. "My friend, Marcus Belby," grinned Quinn, leaving Poppy stunned and confused. "What?" "Yeah, it turns out that his uncle, Damocles Belby, is the inventor of the Wolfsbane potion," revealed Quinn, a fact that was closely related to lycanthropy. The wolfsbane potion was an innovative and complex potion that relieved but did not cure the symptoms of lycanthropy. But even though it wasn't a cure, it was the only medicine that provided some relief to lycanthropes. The way one had to imbibe it was unique among potions, in that a goblet full of wolfsbane potion must have to be taken each day for a week preceding the full moon. Quinn had the recipe for the wolfsbane potion, and, after reading about it in depth, he had to admit that Damocles Belby must have put in immense effort on his part to create the potion. "Ha ha, her expression is so much fun," thought Quinn as he looked at Poppy's slightly open mouth as she stared at Quinn. Poppy was right in suspecting that Quinn knew about Remus Lupin's conditions. He knew about the Dark Against Defense Arts professor's furry little problem, but in no way was he going to tell anyone that he knew. It would bring the faculty's eyes upon him, and that was something he didn't want, even if it might not be that much of a problem. But that didn't mean that Quinn couldn't have some fun without anyone knowing. When Poppy brought out the topic of illness and disease, Quinn recognized the opportunity to spook Poppy a little and see her startled, confused expression. Even if Quinn didn't have the knowledge from the books, he still would have figured out the truth because of the person who substituted for Lupin when he retreated into isolation during the full moon. Severus Snape, as the substitute professor of defense against dark arts, had tried to teach students about werewolves. The spiteful man, who wanted the position but had been denied it time after time, and over that had to brew the wolfsbane potion for the man who was in the position Snape wanted. From what Quinn had gathered through his network of students, Snape had brought up werewolves in his substitute classes as a revision topic every year from 4th to 7th, so that they could get anyone to recognize that Lupin was a lycanthrope. Quinn still recalled the defense against dark arts lesson he had had with Snape, and how in that lesson Snape had been repeatedly looking at Quinn. "Man, that day was so awkward. I had to keep an oblivious face for the entire lesson," recalled Quinn, remembering the day he had to spend an hour ignoring Snape's looks. "Aar, is that so? That is an interesting fact." "I didn't know that," stuttered Poppy and kept the conversation going. She felt relieved that Quinn didn't know about Lupin and the secret was still with the least amount of people, and with the same amount of people at the start of the year. Poppy looked at Quinn, who was applying jam and cream on his scone with gleaming eyes, silently took out her wand. When Quinn was done bringing it near his mouth, the scone floated out of his hands and drifted towards Poppy. The matron picked the scone out of the air and ate it in front of Quinn. "What dash!" exclaimed Quinn at the sight of food being snatched from his hands just before he was about to eat it. "Why?" he asked in astonishment. "Sometimes you can be too much of a hassle," came Poppy's reply as she enjoyed the scone that Quinn had prepared for himself. "What did I do?" asked Quinn, confused. "Be a lamb and make another scone and put more jam this time," ordered Poppy, not answering Quinn's question. "Okay," responded Quinn in confusion before shrugging and complying with the order. One scone with cream and extra jam coming up. Chapter 92, Confrontation with Gryffindor Quidditch Team. It was a clear, sunny day. White fluffy clouds drifted across the clear blue sky. The sun shone brightly. Feeling the grass tickle his feet, Quinn tilted his back to behold a field of blue that stretched far beyond what his eyes could track and where small birds cut across the air as they swooped, spinned, spiraled, and dived. Quinn was lying on a corner on the ground of the Quidditch field, relaxing as he read a book. He once again turned to his side and looked towards one of the goalposts and saw his two friends on brooms, flying alone in the field, playing a game of quaffle hoop as practice for Eddie. Quaffle hoop consisted simply of one player trying to get a quaffle through the hoops while the second player played as keeper, that is, trying to defend against the quaffle going through the goal hoops. Eddie was the one trying to score, while Marcus tried to defend against him. Quinn, on the other hand, was not playing with them. He was simply lying on the green ground, showing his silent support through his presence. Eddie was training to get into the Ravenclaw Quidditch team as a chaser. Chaser was a position in Quidditch. There were 3 chasers per team. The chasers controlled the quaffle and attempted to put it through the goal hoops and make it past the keeper. Each goal was worth 10 points. This made the chaser position similar to the forward in football. The game generally started when the referee released the quaffle into the air and the chasers claimed possession of the quaffle. Chasers were generally considered the most exhilarating players to watch by spectators during a Quidditch game, at least until the golden snitch had been spotted. While the seeker attracted short bursts of attention from the spectators, chasers were always the center of attention. Competing against the other team, trying to score as many points as possible so that even if the opposite team's seeker caught the golden snitch it wouldn't matter, as they would have outscored the other team by a wide margin. Man, he is really putting in the effort, thought Quinn as he stared at Eddie, who was trying to hurl the quaffle in a curve shot. If I didn't know what his real motivation was, I probably would have thought that he was interested in Quidditch. Eddie's motive to get on the team was to get popular and hope that would increase his chances to get a girlfriend, but the amount of effort he was putting in was like he was trying to be the best chaser in Hogwarts. Quinn shrugged and turned to the opposite side to go back to reading on medical potions. The healing magic system in this world was half spells and half potions. Every healer needed to know his potions to be effective and be prepared for the job. An unknown amount of time passed as Quinn continued to read. However, something broke his concentration. He heard some people talking in the distance. Listening to the chatter, Quinn identified it to be coming from his back, so he turned to look and found that Eddie and Marcus were talking to some people. "Isn't that the Gryffindor team?" noticed Quinn after giving the group a closer look. Deciding to see why there was a commotion, Quinn stood up from the ground and started to walk towards his friends. Scene break. "Look, I don't see what the problem is," said Eddie as he pointed at the other side of the field with his arm. "I don't see why you people can't practice on one half of the field. You aren't playing a game, so why do you need the entire field?" Eddie was talking to the Gryffindor team captain, 7th-year student, Oliver Wood. "You ain't a lion, so we can't let you witness our practice. We are at the top this year, and Ravenclaw is trailing in second place," replied Oliver as he eyed the two Ravenclaws. "As such, we can't risk our tactics getting exposed to you two, who are from Ravenclaw. I'll have to ask you to leave." Eddie didn't like the reason Oliver was giving one bit and crossed his arms over his chest. "Not my problem, you can't make me leave. I was here first. Look, why don't we make some sort of arrangement? I'm sure we can come up with some sort of deal," offered Oliver, trying not to sound confrontational and aggressive. This year was his last year at Hogwarts, and he didn't want any mishaps that would somehow debar him or his team from playing Quidditch. But it turned out that luck wasn't at his side, and his wish for a peaceful confrontation was crushed when his seeker started to speak. "Let's just ignore them and play," voiced Harry, intervening in the conversation. He looked at the two Ravenclaws and shrugged. "Don't blame us if you get hit by a bludger. It won't be our problem if you spend a night in the hospital wing." Marcus gulped in slight fear of getting hit by a bludger, but the statement did not scare Eddie. He took a deep breath and thought to himself, "Calm down, Eddie. Don't get riled up. Remember what Mum said, count to 9, and everything will be fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what the hell is with that smile?" Eddie saw Harry smirking and his attempts to calm himself down went down the gutter. He scoffed and retorted, "Of course you would know about hospital wings, don't you, Potter? Seeing that you practically live there." The Weasley twins in the background laughed as they put their hands on their faces. Harry frowned and gave Eddie the stink eye. "What? Are you going to complain to your mum?" "Go on, Mama's boy, I don't mind," smirked Eddie, delighted to see that his words did damage as he punched in another taunt. Harry growled and stepped forward towards Eddie but was held back by Oliver, who could already feel a headache coming up. "Let's not fight." "Harry, back off," Oliver warned Harry and pulled him back with a jerk. He turned back to Eddie and said, "Listen, mate, we really want to practice. We need the field." He made a hand gesture regarding the brooms and quaffle in the duo's hands and commented, "You can play your little game elsewhere. There are other free spaces, I'm sure you'll be able to find one where you can play, but we are a team and need to practice on the field." "Hey! I'm not playing a game," grunted Eddie. He didn't like the tone in which Oliver just spoke. "I have to practice to get on the team. You don't want to get on my bad side because if I make the team, I'll go extra hard against you, guys." "Yeah, right," scoffed Harry in response and smirked at Eddie. "Did you say something? Crash and burns every game, Potter," mocked Eddie and put a hand next to his ear. Harry wanted to say something but stopped when Oliver raised his hand. "Look," started Oliver but was cut off. "Uh-oh. Uh-oh, indeed." The voices of the Weasley twins gathered everyone's attention and everyone looked at them. "What?" asked Alicia Spinnet, one of the 3 Gryffindor chasers. The twins pointed in a direction behind them and spoke in unison. "Little Lord West is coming." Fred and George had come to call Quinn Little Lord West, because of his mannerisms and their interactions with Quinn inside the AID office. Both the twins felt that inside the AID room, everything was in Quinn's control. Despite Quinn's effort to make the office welcoming and comforting for the visitors, to the twins, the office was Quinn's territory, and he was its lord, who ruled every single thing that happened. Everybody looked in the direction the twins were pointing and saw Quinn walking towards them. And it seemed that Quinn had seen them looking at him because he waved with a small smile on his face. "Good afternoon, people. What a great day we are having today," greeted Quinn as he walked to Eddie's side. "What seems to be the problem here?" "They want us to get out of here," replied Eddie, looking bored as he couldn't see why he was wasting his time here. "I see," began Quinn before turning to Oliver. He asked, "Do you have a written permission that states you can use the field exclusively?" No," replied Oliver, looking uncomfortable. He wasn't expecting Quinn to get straight to the point to ask whether they had permission. This training session was a spur-of-the-moment thing and was set this morning after Oliver had seen that the weather was clear, and no other team had booked it. So he jumped at the chance and gathered his team for practice. He didn't get permission that would grant him exclusive possession of the field. "Then, Wood, you can't kick us out," shrugged Quinn. Wood had no authoritative power to kick Eddie and Marcus out of the field. "Also, why do you need the entire field? Just give us this scoring area, and you can take the rest of the field," suggested Quinn. "No, they need the entire field," responded Eddie with a roll of his eyes. "They're scared we'll leak their tactics to the Ravenclaw team." Quinn gave the entire Gryffindor Quidditch team a look and started. He pointed at the Weasley twins and spoke, "Doppelbeater defense and bludger backbit for the beaters. Checking and power play for the chasers," continued Quinn as he pointed at the 3 chasers, Katie Bell, Angelina Johnson, and Alicia Spinnet. He turned to the captain and gave him a thumbs up, double 8 loop, and starfish and stick for the keeper. "Those 2 are tough to pull off." Finally, Quinn addressed Harry, "No hands and less than decent attempts at Wronski feint for the seeker." The Gryffindor team stood still, their jaws on the floor as Quinn rapidly fired the tactics they had been preparing for the second stretch of this year's Quidditch season. Those things were a secret, and no one except the team was supposed to know. Even if someone knew a partial part of the tactics, they wouldn't be happy, but it wasn't impossible for that to happen. But here they stood, watching a guy with an innocent smile on his face revealing their entire bag of tricks and tactics. How?" stuttered Katie in shock. She asked a question that everyone on the Gryffindor team wanted to ask. "How do you know all that?" Quinn raised his arm and flicked his wrist for an AID card to appear in his previously empty hand. Everybody there recognized the card as they had seen it at least a couple of times in their school years. "Information is my bread and butter. I know what is going on inside Hogwarts, and that includes Quidditch knowledge," informed Quinn and then proudly smiled. "I was also hired permanently as the commentator for the Quidditch games, so I had to know what all 4 teams were planning to do for better commentary experience." "You aren't going to reveal this knowledge to anyone, will you?" asked Oliver, sounding apprehensive. The card in Quinn's hand burned to ashes, and all of them suddenly became aware that Quinn had his wand in hand. None of them had seen when Quinn had taken out his wand. One moment both his hands were empty, the next second, he had a card in one and a wand in the other. And while this was happening, he kept a friendly smile on his face. "Of course not. I'm not mad," snorted Quinn derisively. He humphed and pointed at the castle. "If it became known that I leaked information to a team, the entire student body would pelt me with spells. There wouldn't be any safe space for me inside Hogwarts. Plus, that would be bad for business, and I don't want that." Harry looked at Quinn, a scowl prominent on his face. Harry and Ivy Potter, the Potter twins, had spent a lot of time together since birth, as the majority of twins did. Both were their automatic best friends, study buddies, competitors, and confidants. There was never any worry about being alone. Both had spent way too much time together and knew way too much about each other. When Ivy hid something, Harry knew that Ivy wasn't saying something and vice versa. So whenever Ivy showed signs of unusual behavior, Harry noticed and knew that something had happened with Ivy that he didn't know about. As time passed, Harry observed her sister and came to realize that those unusual signs only showed up when Quinn West was nearby. At first, Harry thought her sister liked Quinn, but after further observation, he noticed Ivy didn't show signs of liking Quinn but instead showed slight discomfort when Quinn was nearby. Ivy had a problem with Quinn, was what Harry concluded. He decided to confront Ivy about the subject, but Ivy denied having any problems with Quinn. She didn't fess up even after he pestered for an entire day. After seeing she didn't want to reveal anything, Harry decided to wait for the day she would tell him about the matter. Until that day, Harry would always have his sister's back. When Harry saw Quinn, he decided not to talk to him because he didn't know what happened between Quinn and his sister. But after Quinn rapid-fired his team's tactics, some of the dislike he had developed for Quinn slipped out. "Yeah, you better not," harumphed Harry, slightly scowling at Quinn. Quinn tilted his head as he turned towards Harry, straightened his back, smiled, and was about to speak, but Eddie spoke up before him. "Huh? What did you say?" "Speak up louder, mister, coming to school in a flying car and once again crashing and burning, Potter," thundered Eddie, a mocking smirk plastered on his face. "He is so annoying," thought Harry as he gritted his teeth and glared at Eddie. He was starting to dislike Eddie more than Quinn. Quinn looked at Eddie with a surprised expression. He wanted to know what had happened between Harry and Eddie. Eddie was in full-on aggressive mode and Harry was somehow on the back foot. He took out his pocket watch and glanced at the time. Turning to Eddie, he said, "You have been here for a while. Why don't we go back to the castle? Don't you have a charms assignment to complete?" Eddie looked at Quinn's pocket watch and saw that they indeed had been practicing for a while, more than he had planned to practice. Glancing at the Gryffindor team, Eddie clicked his tongue before speaking to Quinn. "Yeah, let's go back." As they walked past the Gryffindor team, Eddie pulled on his best delinquent punk face towards Harry. Marcus politely nodded in their direction, while trying to end the conversation in a calm way. Quinn, on the other hand, smiled and waved towards Katie as he walked away. Katie waved back with an apologetic smile. After they were at a distance, Marcus spoke up, "Didn't you want to just get popular? Why would you pick a fight with them?" Marcus was a member of the trio that didn't like confrontation and fights. Eddie stomped on the ground and hollered, "Screw that, I have decided it, I'm going to join the team as soon as possible. And when I'm on the team, I am going to play against that arrogant prick and score so many points that a snitch will not help." He was feeling pissed because of the Gryffindor team. Quinn wrapped his arm around Eddie's shoulders and added, "I'm surprised that you didn't back off and give them the field." "Huh? Why in the world would I do that?" spat out Eddie. "I won't lay down and let them walk over me." Quinn nodded and then explained his statement. "What I meant was that I was surprised that you didn't take the chance to leave a good impression on Katie. I remember you asked me to introduce her to you, so I thought you were interested, and wouldn't this be a perfect chance to establish an impression? Instead, you clashed against her team, so I was just wondering." Eddie's entire motivation was to get a girlfriend, so it surprised Quinn that he didn't jump on a good opportunity. Eddie blinked a couple of times and suddenly squatted on the floor. "Dangummit," groaned Eddie with his hands clutching his hair. "How could I let the opportunity get past my grasp? How? That damn four-eyed Potter screwed me over." He looked up at Quinn and Marcus and hissed, "Why did I have to get all riled up?" "No," howled Eddie towards the sky. Marcus shook his head with a hand on his temple, while Quinn cackled. This marks the end of part 30 of the story, Magical Journey in Harry Potter World. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.